There is scientific, historical, and philosophical evidence regarding the existence of God. In real science that involves application, specifically in physics, biology, and chemistry, you have countless evidences of an exact creation, and some that promote the creation of the world in Genesis. I took this information from the book, There is a Creator Who Cares About You, and also from the channels, Intelligentist, Real Science, DNA Science of God. There are other books that talk about the subject and other channels that talk about it, but I will talk about this book and these channels as the basis for everything. I don't have sources noted, but these channels and even the book in question mark the sources if you are curious to research more about the scientific issue. We have countless evidence of an exact, perfect creation that shows superior intelligence. Now, I do not agree anymore with these arguments I used in the past, and the reason I will explain in the future in physics, for example. All the forces of nature, whether electromagnetism, nuclear forces, or gravity, move the entire universe. Each force depends on the entire universe. Each force depends on an extremely specific value to exist and keep everything working. Imagine a lot of code keeping billions of files working. The electromagnetic force, for example, is responsible for the attraction of protons and electrons. It is defined by the magnetic flux and electrical charges. It is responsible for many things, basically everything that involves electricity, magnetism, or rather, flow and vibration, has at least a finger in the middle. Studies indicate that the electromagnetic force is at least 1040 times stronger than the force of gravity. 1040 is the same as 10 with 40 different zeros. And a changing one more or less zero could change everything. If this number was actually 1041, gravity would be weaker. This could complicate or completely annihilate life in the entire universe, as gravity is responsible for movement and in the order of planets, stars, and black holes. If the force were minimally reduced, the principle of light, sound, and movement would change drastically. The same goes for if the number were 1039, where gravity becomes stronger and electromagnetism becomes weaker to us. This could affect the Earth's magnetic fields and the way light propagates. In the case of nuclear forces, the weak nuclear force is responsible for the decay of particles. It is essential for nuclear fusion, being essential for the existence of the sun, for example. I don't know much about the strong nuclear force, but it has an important role in the structure of the nucleus of atoms. Basically, nuclear forces are responsible for everything that involves radiation, raw energy, and connections, being a parallel between electromagnetism as well as electromagnetism and gravity. If its strength had a change of 1%, would be enough to change the way stars like the sun work. This, in any scenario, could make it difficult for life to emerge of its own free will. And in the case of the weak force, it is very fundamental for all elements on the planet. With it being only 2% altered, a good part of the resources that keep the planet standing perhaps wouldn't even exist. There is also the fact that in gravity, the movement of the Earth, its position, and even its shape completely influences the way in which life can exist. I don't remember much about this part, but I don't remember much about it. But in short, the movement of the Earth is in perfect condition compared to the movement of other planets. The shape of the Earth is in excellent modules to withstand the resulting forces on it, so much so that there is the Earth's atmosphere and magnetic fields protecting us. In short, in all of physics, anything can fall apart if there is no creator, apart from the fact that all the details of each foundation are extremely specific and well modeled. The theory that the universe came without a creator fails to explain how these details emerged, and in the case of the Big Bang theory, the idea of the expansion of the universe has already been refuted by professors and even by James Webb himself. In the area of biology and chemistry, life works in the same way. Life on Earth is much more than a bunch of random compositions founded to form life and then life developing through natural selection. Just like in physics, in biochemistry, there are countless factors that prevent natural selection. One of them, for example, are amino acids, which within our body are fundamental for the formation of molecules, tissue, and enzymes. In addition to being responsible for the formation of proteins and fats, there are two types of amino acids for their formation during life, type A and type B, left and right. A published study shows that for life to exist through amino acids, 75% of the molecules must be of the type A and 25% of type B. In a scenario of type A and 25% of type B, in a scenario where life is 20 billion years old, this would be about 1025 seconds, but all calculations indicate that life can only emerge in 1087 seconds, which is literally 10 with 87 zeros. There are also other factors linked to chemical composition, such as the environment that supposedly generated life not being favorable according to the famous scientists themselves, and the fact that to this day there are no experiments proving that a lifeless chemical composition can result in life, so much so that the basic idea of evolutionism about the formation of life arises from abiogenesis, which is the idea that life arises from lifeless matter, which in the past was literally a myth. There is still the question that the theory of evolution does not apply to the origin of many species. Many species have an application in an evolutionary scenario. According to the theory of evolution, environmental pressures, mutations, and adaptations would be enough to make a species evolve. But there are no direct applications proving this point, nor are there any examples in nature in the last 4,000 years, even if there are species that have a life that is not fully formed. Many say that genetic adaptation and anatomical similarities prove Darwin's theory, but this is wrong. Genetic adaptation in real life proves to be microevolutionary and not macroevolutionary. It is one thing for a species to adapt to alter characteristics already existing in your organism. Another thing is a species through pressure, developing new aspects through adaptation. The adaptation that exists in a proven way is microevolution, while the adaptation that supposedly makes a species appear out of nowhere and become another species is macroevolution, which is mere supposition. There is also the fact of human origin. Among so many species, the human being supposedly evolved to be the most intelligent, but we have to remember that the chronology of evolutionary events makes no sense whatsoever. According to Darwin's theory, the human being came from the primates, and it came to be what it is today through adaptation. This has never applied in logic. As mentioned in the video, there has never been a middle ground between primates and humans. There are primates that behave exactly like supposed primitive men among tribes and yet never developed the power to speak. But animals like parrots that haven't been through even half of that talk. The human brain itself is a very personal matter. Its structure is fully formed by connections between the entire body and between oneself, moved by electromagnetic waves, and to this day being a complete mystery. The origin of the brain does not apply to Darwin's theory at any time, and our ability to think and feel is not similar to any species. Few have a trace of our capabilities, but there has never been a significant change from generation to generation. In other words, in short, all science shows an exact and intelligent formation, while natural selection just shows a bunch of assumptions shaped like a script and not as something true. In the historical question, many biblical events actually occurred in the real world. There are different records of biblical cities, biblical figures, and even marked events. The Tower of Babel, for example, was highlighted, and it in itself showed an extremely direct origin for the languages of multiple nations in a much more effective way than the evolutionary origin for language. The Intelligentista channel made an entire video explaining this. Noah's own flood also owes its evidence. The Intelligent channel also showed a video explaining the flood, so I won't go into too much detail. But going back to real history, there are records of the existence of figures like Jesus Christ mentioned in the book by authors who they lived at the same time that Jesus supposedly existed. Apostles and writers were dated as real, and even prehistoric fossils have more veracity in the biblical context than in the evolutionary one. There is also the cultural issue. Much of the general culture of our world takes biblical references and adapts them to everyday life. in the consensus where the Bible emerged and with its teachings, in comparison to other beliefs and mythologies that emerged during, before, and after, it would be impossible for it to become the most popular religion in the world, given that, to this day, there are theologians studying and proving what he says on Philosophical, the 2 videos I couldn't post. In a well-translated way, the evidence of God is found in science with proof of the exact creation of intelligent design. It is found in history through historical evidence, and it is found in morality through teachings that are still effective today, which involves application, specifically in physics, biology, and chemistry. You have countless evidences of an exact creation, and some that promote the creation of the world in Genesis. And with that, I fully share with you a small fraction of my wisdom. Brothers who hear this, beware the Antichrist. Look for wisdom study. It's the only way of approaching our Creator, God.